Hey guys, welcome back. It's another episode of the Spartan Shadows podcast. I'm your host, Chris. I'm joined with my co-hosts, Zach and Emmett. And Big Ten championship, regular season over, senior day win. Vibes are good for the Spartan basketball team. We wanted to get on and bring you our normal episode for this week before the Big Ten tournament starts in both basketball and then the semifinals for the hockey tournament. So we wanted to get in and do a little discussion, kind of recapping senior day for the basketball team, shaping up a couple things for some other sports, and then hopefully later this week we'll have more tournament stuff for just basketball. And we plan to do a few things over the next few weeks for the Big Ten tournament and for the NCAA tournament once Selection Sunday happens. So just wanted to get on and recap senior day and do a couple other things with you guys. We'll also get into some mailbag questions that we've gotten from some fans for today about the basketball team. So lots of fun things in store. Zach, Emmett, how you guys doing?
Pretty good. Can't complain too much, especially after obviously love being a rival on senior night. Obviously sending the senior out on the right note. We'll talk a little bit more about the game, especially the ending of the game. I know that Emmett has a lot to say regarding that. So probably going to be a few minute rant, at least on Emmett's end, it seems like. I'm sure we probably have a few opinions ourselves for Chris and I, but can't really complain too much. Always love winning the Big Ten, hosting another banner first time in 5 years. That's not Draymond Green, so technically it hasn't been exactly 5 years since we've raised a banner, but turns out we actually know how to raise a banner. Unlike Illinois, it actually raises it the right direction. So Illinois, maybe kind of tune in a little bit to what Michigan State does because we can actually raise a banner. How are you doing, Emmett?
Doing pretty good. The entire drive home, I just let myself get more and more angry about how that senior day ended. So, doing great. But no, it was great to see the Spartans win. Great to see these seniors get sent out on top. Great to see them get to raise the banner. Have the hockey team join them for that banner raising. I have the football coaches, and it was just a great experience. Great day overall to be a Spartan. Always love beating Michigan, but getting to raise the banner, I know that beating your rival is important, but at least Ohio State will say raising that banner and that championship means a lot more at the end of the year.
Absolutely. Always fun to punk on the rival a little bit. We got to do it both on the court and a little bit, well, outside of play, I guess, but we'll get into that in a few minutes. And then, of course, banner ceremony stuff. It was a fun day. I know Emmett and I hit on a little bit on our quick reaction. We wanted to do more of a breakdown tonight, so that'll take up the majority of the episode. Like I said, we do have some mailbag questions. I do want to start us off first with just some other sport news. The first round of the Big Ten tournament in hockey wrapped up this weekend. We had series taking place over the course of this weekend. Best of three series for the quarterfinals. We had Notre Dame taking on Minnesota in Minnesota. We had Penn State taking on Michigan in Ann Arbor, and we had Wisconsin taking on Ohio State in Columbus. All three series are final as of time of recording, so we know what these semifinal matchups will be. MSU obviously being the one overall seed. They had the double bye, or the bye, not the double bye, sorry, basketball terms there, but they had the bye going into next weekend's, automatically going to the semifinals, and MSU is going to be taking on the lowest remaining seed available. It turns out that's Notre Dame. They shocked the world and beat the Golden Gophers, who were heavy favorites. Notre Dame, like I had mentioned in an article I wrote for Spartan Avenue about the Big Ten hockey tournament, Notre Dame hasn't had the best of seasons this year. They've had kind of a rough stretch, and this is their coach of the last 20 seasons is stepping down, retiring at the end of the year. So kind of a last hurrah for him, and boy, was that a good one, upsetting the Golden Gophers in 3 games. They won today 3-1 in Game 3. So MSU will take on Notre Dame next weekend in their semifinal matchup. The other semifinals, OSU ended up beating Wisconsin in 3 games, 2 games to 1. They will take on Penn State, who upset the Wolverines in 2 games, actually. I thought that was going to be a close series. I did think Penn State was going to win that one, but they kind of took it to Michigan this series. And I had a feeling, like I said, Penn State would win with riding the hot goalie, but they looked really good against Michigan. Kind of glad Notre Dame won and we avoided maybe that matchup, but Nevertheless, your semifinals are set. So Ohio State will take on Penn State in Columbus next weekend. And then the other semifinal, Notre Dame comes to Munn, and that game will be Saturday night, 6 p.m. I don't know when tickets go on sale quite yet, but they will be soon. So make sure to get yours. Be there, be loud. It's going to be a crazy environment. The Big Ten tournament now shifts to single elimination, so it's just one game for everything. Winner goes to the championship game, which will take place the following weekend. So no room for errors anymore. It's one game, and that's how it's going to be for the rest of the Big Ten tournament and on into the NCAA tournament for the Spartans. So time to put together some clean hockey and win the games in front of you, because that's all we can do now. So I look forward to Notre Dame. We just played them recently a couple weeks ago, so it should be a fun one. What do you got anything to add for hockey? And I know not always, but what are you guys looking forward to for the hockey series next weekend?
Just excited.
Go ahead.
I'm just excited to see how the Spartans match up, especially because Notre Dame has, like Chris said, hasn't had the best of years, but you saw what they could do to Minnesota, who arguably one of the most complete teams outside of the Spartans. So it's obvious you can't fall asleep on this team. Sure, you probably have an NCAA tournament bid locked up, but do you really want to put yourself in that awkward situation of the committee having to decide where to place you because of a loss to an objectively worse Notre Dame team?
Yeah, I'm definitely excited about it. Should be a good game. Obviously, Notre Dame has motivation, just continuing their season, obviously having their coach retiring after this year. Michigan State obviously just played Notre Dame prior to this, swept the series, so obviously there's some familiarity there. Having a little bit of extra time to practice, so hopefully, I think it's just going to be a really fun series. Hopefully Michigan State can obviously get the win, but yeah, it should be a really fun atmosphere at Munn. I think it's going to be just electric in there like it has been all year. And yeah, hopefully MSU can beat Notre Dame and then maybe go back to back possibly for the Big Ten regular season and the Big Ten tournament as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the Spartans should pretty easily be still, no matter what happens, even if you do slip up against Notre Dame. I would imagine they stay on the 1 seed line in the NCAA tournament. I guess worst case, you're going to slip down to a 2, but I don't think that'll happen. They've pretty much entrenched themselves in the 1 seed category. But like Evan said, you don't want to give the committee any second thoughts. I mean, look what Michigan did. They were pretty staunchly in the NCAA tournament and getting upset by Penn State and losing a couple games down the stretch. There's talk that depending on how some of these other conference tournaments shake out, they may not qualify for the NCAA tournament now because you have some teams going a little bit farther than you thought they would. I mean, if Notre Dame puts on a miracle run and wins their 2 next games, they get an automatic bid into the NCAA tournament, and that kicks a team like Michigan potentially out. So you want to not get too far ahead of yourselves. You want to just take what's in front of you. MSU is familiar with Notre Dame, like I said, with having to play them recently, so hopefully they can carry some of that over and get another win against them. But yeah, it's definitely something you don't want to look ahead over or scoreboard watch in Columbus against Penn State and Ohio State, because I mean that's how hockey is anyways. I mean, the best teams can be beaten on any given night. So, but it will be an exciting one. I'm excited to see it. That game, I believe, is going to be on Big Ten Network next Saturday. So if you can't get down to Munn, make sure you tune in. It'll be a fun one. And then I will have some stuff coming out this week for both Shadows and Avenue, article-wise, talking about it. And then if we can fit some more content in for you podcast-wise, maybe we'll get some discussion throughout the week, just previewing that a little bit more. So switching gears over really quickly to baseball, we'll get in a little bit of baseball update. Unfortunately, the baseball team did lose today, but they're still on a great start to the season. Note here, MSU Baseball does play Michigan at home for the only time this season. This Wednesday, I believe you said, Zach, at 4:05. So those around East Lansing, it'll be the only time you can get to see the school down the road come into East Lansing. So go check it out and support Coach Boss and the boys, and hopefully they can keep their hot start to the season going. Zach, what are you thinking about that matchup Wednesday? How do we fare?
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. Kind of at the beginning of the year, Michigan started out extremely well. They actually won against, I believe, at the time, number two Virginia for the first game of the year, which obviously got some talk about them for this year. They're a team that has several guys back. Mitch Voigt is going to be someone that's going to continue to be very good for Michigan. You also do have a couple other guys over there that have been there for a while. So guys that have been a little bit of an issue for Michigan State in the past, but that's just because they're really good players. But yeah, 12-3 right now for Michigan State. A couple of games we gave away, honestly. The UCLA game was basically a huge one inning for them. I believe they scored like 8 or 9 runs in one inning, and then everything else was kind of put away. UAB, Michigan State did come back, tie it, but they ended up scoring about 4 runs, I believe, in the bottom of the eighth, or bottom or top of the eighth. So that kind of put a little bit away. It kind of seems like this team plays extremely well. Sometimes they give up those big innings, and when they do, those are kind of the games that they lose. But yeah, it should be a fun game. It's supposed to be pretty nice on Wednesday, so if you do have a possibility to go, you should. It's not going to be like 20, 30 degrees. I think it's expected to be like 48, 50 degrees, which honestly isn't exactly perfect, but for baseball weather at this point of the year, it's going to be nice. And again, like Chris was saying, this is the only game that Michigan is going to be in East Lansing, and obviously there's dislike for each other, to put it kindly. And we'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about basketball here shortly.
Yeah, I'll actually take that transition there and say, speaking of dislike for one another, the school down the road was in East Lansing today for senior day against the men's basketball team. I don't know if you guys heard, but there was a game played at the Breslin Center. And, well, it went pretty well for the Spartans, so let's hope the baseball team can have a similar outcome on Wednesday. But MSU ended up winning the game today, a final score 79-62. Well-rounded effort, as we kind of talked about a little bit earlier, Emmett and I did, but the Spartans got out to a hot start, and they kind of took it to the Wolverines in the first half. Actually went into the break up 50-28, and then Michigan did make it closer, I should say, in the second half. I don't know if it was ever as close as what maybe some of us thought it was. It got, I think, within 11 at one point, but then the starters for MSU came back in and kind of reestablished a little bit of separation between them. And that was about it as far as the scoring part of the game. But like I said, solid effort. MSU shot about 45% from the field, 40% from three almost, rounding up here, obviously. Almost 85% at the free throw line. They out-rebounded Michigan 41-35. Your leading scorers for the day: Trey Holloman with 20, Jase had 18, Jaden Akins had 11, Jackson added 9 with 7 boards, Carson Cooper had 8 boards. So pretty good effort for the boys. And then, yeah, dislike, I guess we'll get into that a little bit, and we'll elaborate, I guess, kind of set it up, and then we'll get into it a little bit more towards the end. But down the stretch, you obviously have the tradition of the seniors getting subbed out and kissing the Spartan logo before being checked out and getting their standing ovation. Was it, I believe, Zapala went first or Fiddler went first? I can't remember who went first, with no issue. And then the other one of the two went to go check out and have their moment. Two Michigan players decided to move back and stand on the Spartan logo before that moment, and they were not going to let the MSU player kiss the floor. Jaden and Trey tried to yell at them and say, hey, let us have this. They didn't move, so Trey kind of took it upon himself to move them for them, and a scuffle ensued, and both teams had to be separated. There was no real harm. I don't think any punches were thrown, just some shoving and, lively banter, we'll call it. And then, Tom and Dusty May kind of got together and talked, and it seemed what I thought was okay. There were some interesting post-game comments from Dusty May's end, I guess. But overall, teams had to be separated, and then everybody got to go off the court. Jaden got to have his moment, and then game ended with no harm, no foul. But Made it a little interesting. Got to feel that hatred for Michigan once again. And so overall, that was my little quick recap of the game. I thought it was a great effort. And Zach, before we get into the breakdown of the incident, how'd you feel like the game went today from the basketball perspective?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, that first half was probably the most fun and most I smelled in the first half all year, honestly. At least in a really long time. It's been a while. I can't remember how many games it's been, but there's probably been maybe like one or two times in like the last 10 games where we actually had a lead going into halftime, and this one was a 22-point lead. So it was like all like just having fun, honestly. Second half, not gonna lie, it's fun. Would have loved to have a little bit more fun in the second half, especially if we didn't go like point guard and three power forwards for like 6 minutes. Would love to never see that lineup again. But if that's my one complaint about this game, I'm doing pretty good. So yeah, Jase was great again. Jaden, love to see him hit his first couple of threes. I'm really happy for him. Honestly, if you want to talk about a guy, and I'm sure we'll talk about all the seniors here shortly, but if you want to talk a guy that kind of is an OKG, like our kind of guy, I feel like Jaden Akins is just kind of the definition of that for this team. He's a guy that obviously isn't having the year he expected and wanted to have, but he's a guy that stuck around. And I know there's that whole conversation a few years ago, and they're like, do you want 3 years of Jaden Akins, 3 or 4 years, or do you want 1 year of Imani Bates? Well, guess what? We got our answer, and guess what? We got a ring now because of it. So absolutely the correct answer was, turns out 4 years of Jaden Akins, but he absolutely deserves it. Jeremy Fears, I thought, did a really good job of pushing the ball, especially in the second half when things kind of started to get a little bit iffy. Glad to see Frankie score. I also love to see Simone Zapala score at the end of the game, so at least he got to score on senior night. Obviously, not his best game, but when you're going up against like 2 7-footers, it's kind of difficult. But this was just a fun game. Obviously, love beating Michigan at home by 17 to clinch, not only clinch, but basically win the Big Ten by 3 games. So it wasn't even relatively close at the end of the day. But yeah, Jackson Kohler, almost another double-double. He just seems like he's a double-double machine, or like really close to that almost every game when he finally does score in the games. And then I would have loved, the one thing I do wish that happened is I would have loved a calling card dunk in this game. Like, I would have loved a calling card dunk over like Vlad Golden or Danny Wolf. I feel like that's the only thing we're missing. Sadly, we're maybe never getting that. Maybe possibly next year with Danny Wolf. Again, this is not a Michigan podcast, so I don't know. But I would love to see a calling card dunk over one of those. Didn't happen. We didn't get a calling card dunk in this game. But it turns out when you shoot 37.5% from three, you don't need a big dunk to get the crowd going. Guess what? You can get that going shooting. And that's what they did in this game. And if they continue to shoot well, outside, like going forward, I think it's going to be a really fun team.
Yeah, I think that this team has finally begun to hit a rhythm from three, knock on wood, obviously, but this team finally has that rhythm from three, and they actually were able to do that and have their free throws land today, which in previous games we've seen the three shot fall, but the free throws not, or the free throws go in and the three does not. So it was great to see both of those working for the Spartans today. Trey Hallman had an out-of-sorts day, missing a couple free throws, but when you respond with, I believe it might have been back-to-back or back-to-back-to-back threes, that kind of makes up for missing 2 free throws. On the other hand, Carson Cooper, who has kind of regressed back to his sophomore form of free throws, went 4 for 4 from the line today. Want to shout him out for that. And then also, post-game scuffle, before I really get into it, I do want to shout out a couple players. Simone Zapala breaking it up when it was supposed to be his moment to go and kiss at the center of the court, helping break it up and separate Trey from everyone. And also, Will Shutter and Roddy Gale of Michigan also went in there to help break it up. And another thing I noticed when watching replays, I know that everyone's had thoughts on Xavier Booker. I know that he's the lightning rod for criticism from the 10-man rotation this year. Sometimes it might be fair, sometimes it's not. It's kind of somewhere in between. But the first player off the bench, in case that became a bench-clearing brawl and everyone was throwing punches, the first guy you see coming into frame before the assistant coaches get him back is Xavier Booker. So you can say what you want about when he's on defense, when he's on offense, his shot's not falling. You can't say that Booker doesn't care for his team and his teammates. That is something that really stood out to me when just watching replays and immediate reaction. Even in my own videos, which I posted, you can see Booker as one of the first ones starting to get out towards the center court in case punches started flying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Book, at times this year, has looked maybe, I don't want to say disengaged, but just like you can tell the season's kind of taken a toll on him. I think he would be the first to say he thought it would go differently. But that doesn't mean he's backed away from being there for his teammates or being there for anybody on the team. So credit to Xavier Booker for that. It's good to see at least that he's still willing to be, involved and willing to be the good teammate. And I mean, the thing you don't want to see from somebody like that is if they're completely checked out or they're not, not doing anything and just not aware of stuff like that or wanting to be in things like that. So that shows a lot from Xavier Booker with how this season's gone. But yeah, getting into the scuffle, I'll let Emmett get back in a little bit here in a second. Unfortunately, we've kind of, how do we pick my words carefully? We kind of have gotten into this and see it more with Michigan in the past years that, I mean, we know Michigan and Michigan fans like to tout that they are the matter of, righteous, and they're the golden example of how things should be ran in programs, and they're kind of above it all. But then time and time again, you see things like this happen in Michigan games, and it's not just against the MSU, even though a lot of it is because, hey, there's no secret, we all hate each other. So I don't know if that's a big secret, but I mean, you saw the stuff with Juwan Howard and Greg Gard a few years ago. I mean, you see the stuff with Ohio State every year. I mean, it's not just MSU, even though MSU is kind of the center of it. Thankfully, I do want to say, regardless, nothing crazy like the tunnel incident, because that was just ugly all around in football. Nobody seemed to have gotten hurt. I do want to credit, the couple of Michigan players Emmett mentioned for getting in and trying to make peace quickly. Dusty May was right there with Tom Izzo on the floor, kind of trying to calm tensions, and they talked to each other quickly and, this and that. Now, where I will differ is that this whole discord about not knowing the tradition and not knowing what they were doing is 100% bullcrap, and I don't think anybody could convince me otherwise ever. This is something MSU has done since 1995. It was the first time that the Kiss the Spartan is done. You see it happen every year, and there's been 2 incidents where it's upset coaches. And even with the whole Chris Holtman thing in Ohio State, that didn't come to players shoving each other. The 2 players for Michigan with Fab Brooks and I forget his name.
Number 2.
LJ
Kaysen, thank you. They knew exactly what they were doing. Dusty May talked in his post-game press conference and had a kind of smart reaction like, oh, we can't stand at half court during a free throw anymore. I didn't know that was a rule, or type, whatever he said exactly. I'm not exactly quoting him here, but the entire game, people went through, and I kind of watched some different things throughout the game too. Every free throw that the Spartans took or Michigan took, everybody was up on the paint like, they normally are. And then it's just that free throw, they happen to go all the way back to the Spartan head. I wonder why it was that specific free throw. So they knew exactly what was going on. And then furthermore, they can't claim ignorance either when Trey and Jaden are on video going, hey, we need you guys to move. This is something that we do. And then they didn't move. And I love Trey's postgame. He was asked about it postgame on the court, and he said, they asked him to describe what happened. And he said, well, we asked them to move, and they were going to move, whether it was them doing it on their own accord or if I was going to make them. So it just happened to be that he made them. So I will say credit to Trey Holloman. I normally don't condone things getting physical like that unless it is hockey, because hockey kind of welcomes that sort of thing. But that was a situation where I'm all for it. You kind of light the spark and you say, all right, you're not going to move and you're going to disrespect this. I'm going to take exception to it and get up and tell you why. And hey, Trey did it, and Coach Izzo even acknowledged that. And for those of you who hadn't seen it, go to Emmett's videos, his live recording of the Big Ten championship ceremony after the game and after the senior night festivities. Coach brought Trey, kind of shout him out at center court and said, we have this tradition. We've upheld it for 30 years, and I want to congratulate this guy for fighting to uphold our tradition. And he let Trey bend over and kiss the Spartan as a junior. He's like, for this one time, you're going to do it for sticking to this tradition and making sure this tradition means something. And I don't get it twisted. Tom Izzo was not lost on how big of a moment that is. Tom can't really come out and probably say what he wants to say about it, but I know Tom Izzo probably loved every minute of that. And it was cool that Jonathan Smith and Coach D'Antonio were there. I'm sure Coach D'Antonio is smiling ear to ear about all this stuff, but Jonathan Smith gets another eye-opening of what this rivalry can be. I don't want to, go through too much. I've seen former players on social media. I'm not going to name anybody specifically, but I've seen a lot of former football and basketball players have some choice words about how that went down. And, MSU, just we don't kind of stand for that stuff. So, Emmett, I know you have some thoughts.
Oh boy. So, just going through and looking at it, at the time, I was relatively annoyed just watching it from the press area for media. I was relatively annoyed because they knew what they were doing. Sure, they're freshmen, but Kaysen had been playing Chippy all game long, which, to be fair, he was guarded up against Fears, and Jeremy Fears is an instigator at point guard.
Oh, absolutely.
Those two are going to be jawing back and forth, and that's how the Michigan State guards play. They play with an edge. Do they play arguably almost out of control at points? Yeah, you've seen it with Tyson. You've seen Tyson jawing at players. You've seen AJ jawing at players. Then you have this year's class. You have Trey and Jeremy. They like to talk to players. They like to talk smack. If they can get in their head, they're gonna do it. So obviously, Kaysen was playing a little on edge, a little chippy. You saw it at the start of the second half. Danny Wolf getting that extra push off on players. Carson Cooper almost falling on a free throw because of the Danny Wolf push. So you saw it really starting to spiral at the start of the second half.
Jase getting pushed out of bounds. Sorry, not to interrupt you, but
that's what I was about to go to. Jase getting pushed out of bounds. Two different guys shoved him out of bounds, and it was ruled Richardson turnover, no foul.
Yep.
One of those guys was Kaysen.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of saw that building, and then Fat Brooks. He went to Grand Rapids Christian, which, if that sounds familiar to Spartan fans, that's Marcus Bingham's high school. And in 2022, he went on a campus visit and was offered by Michigan State. He knows what that means. I'm sure he probably at least saw Marcus Bingham getting to go and kiss the court during his senior day celebration. So don't try to give me that they don't know what it is. In the fall, we heard all about how Michigan State cannot lose with class because of the Anthony Jones and Colston Loveland fight.
Yep.
But all of a sudden, Michigan can win with class and lose with class, and it's always Michigan State causing the issue. The problem is, Michigan claims to be the paradigm of virtue, and all they have done is create fights. You can't win with class. You can't lose with class. You can't go to halftime with class. We saw it with James Franklin and Penn State. You saw it with Ohio State. Michigan can't do anything and not be the victim. Hail to the victims, I guess, but at the end of it, you have to at some point look in the mirror. Now, I'm not saying Michigan State's innocent. Did I think that Jeremy Fears was towing the line at the very start of the game by clapping in a player's face? And do I think it could have backfired horribly if Michigan went on like a 20-5 run? For sure. I thought that could definitely come back to bite the Spartans. That's why you didn't see me really tweeting it out, besides saying that Izzo pulled him back to tell him to get his head out of his you-know-what and focus on the game.
Mm-hmm.
But then, instead of owning up and trying to say that they were taking the rivalry a little personally or something like that from Dusty May, he instead goes and says, "Oh, I didn't know they did that." Dusty May was at Indiana in 1997 when the Spartans beat them on Senior Day. I do not know if they kissed the court in 97. I know Respert kissed it in 95, but Cleves brought it back in 2000, so there could have been years that did not happen. I wasn't alive then. Don't come at me on that. But, so you saw that in 97, and then Dusty May coached at Eastern Michigan University. Trust me, I know a ton of people going to Eastern, and they know a lot about MSU.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot tell me a basketball coach at Eastern Michigan University is not at least aware of Michigan State traditions, because the players they're recruiting at Eastern are the guys who wanted to go to Michigan, the guys who wanted to go to Michigan State, Ohio State, but were overlooked or not talented enough, frankly. So you have these guys who have these dreams and want to bring these cultures and values. So do not try to come at me with the, oh, they didn't know. If you're going to do that chicken you-know-what move, own up to it. You're a freshman. You're going to be in this rivalry at least another 2 years, because Fat and Kaysen aren't going to the NBA this year.
No.
It's more of a question if they're transferring than if they're going to the NBA. So if you're going to make that move, own up to it and say, yeah, we took it personally. And stand behind your player, then don't try to say, oh, so they can't do this? So either you have a discipline issue in your locker room, or you have a coach who's not willing to discipline his players and publicly talk about them. So regardless, it's still a culture issue for the University of Michigan. You've seen it with football, you've seen it with basketball now. What else is going to change for Michigan? Sorry. Anyway.
And before I let Jack go, I just want to say, this is something, it does happen. It's, and I don't want to preach like we're holier than thou or either team's better than
Not
any.
at all.
No, MSU is notorious for, especially in basketball, having a bunch of players that, quite frankly, excuse my language, are shit stirrers and like to play rough and like to get taunting and talking into their teams. I mean, i.e., see example A, Draymond Green. So it's not uncommon.
Draymond, you can name Draymond almost any guard that's played for MSU. Name any guard besides probably Cassius.
Yeah.
From the last 5-10 years. Oh, and Tum Tum. Take Tum Tum out of this too. But you can probably name any guard, and you have clips of them jawing in opponents' faces, getting a little handsy, just trying to get in the other player's head. I remember Rocket Watts as a freshman had that attitude.
Mm-hmm.
So it is definitely I wouldn't say Michigan State's blameless in this. I do think that there is a culture of being almost, I wouldn't say overlooked, but being that I am going to make your life difficult. When we asked Jaden Akins for media what his advice is if you're going against Jeremy Fears, his response is, good luck, because he's going to be talking just as much as he's moving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so the point of all that is this is what this rivalry embodies, and this is what this rivalry is. And if you're not prepared to deal with that, then you got to look at yourself a little bit, because you send your players out and you have your players do a move like this, they better be prepared to back it up regardless of what side of the field we're on, because I know darn well if the MSU guards were standing doing something similar, doing something like that, I'm sure there's Michigan players taking exception to it.
And all 400 fans in the crowd would care.
Yep, and you'd see people, I mean, you've seen it in football with the stomping of the logos at Spartan Stadium, the planting of the flags at other teams' stadiums, all this stuff that just seems to get people, Spartans walking across the field and lock hands. And, I mean, something like this happens every year. So this is what this rivalry is. Don't complain about it. Just strap up and deal with it. And if you pull up a move like that, you better be prepared to back it up.
I'm up to it.
And that's pretty much that. So, Zach, sorry.
No, you're good. I think that you've kind of covered a lot of it. The one thing I do want to say, I want to give credit, because obviously this is not my specific, quote-unquote saying, but Greg Waddell over at Sleepers Media basically said, don't poke the bear. And Trey is the bear, and they poke the bear, and don't mess with the bear. And when you mess with the bear, guess what? You find out what happens. And honestly, the last 2 games, people have poked the wrong person. And even if you don't poke Trey, let's say you poke Jeremy, or let's say you poke Jaden, or let's say you poke Kohler. There's literally at least 4 guys on this team that you do not want to make upset. And if you find any way to make them upset, it's going to get everyone upset at you, and it's just going to be all not fun. And we've seen what this team can do defensively. They, I think, went 3 minutes and 30 seconds around without Michigan scoring a field goal, which that kind of seems like it's been a trend for Michigan State, holding teams to field goals. And that's just because of, one, is the depth of this team just continues to wear it down. But the thing is if you give MSU and this team any spark, anywhere. Like, if you make one mistake, we've seen it over and over and over. It doesn't typically end well for you. And Michigan made that mistake today. And obviously, it doesn't factor in really the final score of it. But guess what? You made Trey almost, I don't want to say legend, but almost a legend at this point. Like, this is going to be a game that's going to be remembered for a long, long time. This is going to be obviously the game that Izzo tied the most Big Ten championships out of any coach in the Big Ten. But guess what? This is going to be a game that when you get another banner in 2025, which is obviously great. We haven't hung up, like I was saying earlier, a banner in quite a while. But you got basically kind of taken to the woodshed by Michigan State. Michigan State, again, won the Big Ten. And you also have these moments after the game with the hockey team. First time ever the hockey team and basketball team has won the Big Ten. You've seen that picture. You've seen all the former players come on the court. You see D'Antonio, Jonathan Smith. Like, you are creating something that these fans, that Michigan State fans, are going to remember for a lifetime. And obviously, like, some Big Ten championships are going to be more memorable than others, and depends on what happens kind of in the future. We got a couple weeks coming up that for some people might mean a little bit more, but guess what? What's going to be remembered from this team is that this is a Big Ten team, and that moment's going to be remembered. And you're going to see that picture of Trey at Iowa. You're going to see that picture of Trey against Michigan. Like that. That's yeah, Trey against Edie. If you're really thinking about where Trey is with one of the most likable players, those moments are going to make him rise up the rankings. And this Big Ten championship is just another reason why to love Trey Howman.
Yep.
Yeah, quick side note. How are you going to be expected of Trey to be intimidated by two Wolverines standing on the logo when he wasn't intimidated by a 7'4" Zach Edey? He's not going to be afraid of a guy who calls himself fat. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, and that kind of wraps it up. I guess we could probably go all night about the things that, this rivalry makes us hate about the other team and stuff like that. But I will say I do want to shout out, and I'm glad Zach mentioned it. Greg and Carter over at Sleepers Media do a great job. Greg's obviously a Michigan fan, so getting his his perspective on all these things is nice, because while he is a Michigan fan, he's also rational about a lot of things and has really good takes most of the time. But no, they're both really good at what they do. And just to give two quick quotes, Zach mentioned it, the quote, sometimes you poke the bear, sometimes the bear shows up at your front door and devours you in front of your family. And that was Greg about this Michigan State team. And then another one about this Michigan State team is, quote, this team's historically insane and I am terrified. So, hey, it is what it is, I guess, and it's been a fun few weeks. The Iowa game in this back-to-back, plus coupled with that Maryland buzzer beater, you mentioned it, Trey's status as all-time Spartan legends is just climbing. And I saw somebody on Twitter, and I forget who it was, but I like the idea. Trey's working himself up to making that number 5 just even more elite. So maybe we make it like LSU's football number 7. And it's not retired, but you only earn that number if you're a certified dog and you are everything that the Spartans embody. So maybe we can get that going after Trey leaves MSU, and hopefully, obviously not this year, he's still got another year, but hopefully after many more wins and a couple more banners, maybe. Please. That'll do it for the game. Like I said, big win for the Spartans, Big Ten championships in the regular season. That is number 11 for coaches. A Big Ten tournament starting on Wednesday for the first games, and then Thursday at what time, Emmett? Noon for Oregon, Indiana?
Yeah, I believe it is noon. I know Friday's game will be noon, so yeah, I'm assuming they will follow the same schedule.
Yeah, I think noon.
Obviously, the Thursday game will be a noon game to give the team as much time to rest and prepare. So the Spartans do have to wait to find out who they play. However, they do have the guarantee of basically the worst remaining seed no matter what, assuming that the high seeds win. Yeah. Obviously, that might not be the case, but they get the guarantee of knowing one of 2 opponents as opposed to one of 3 opponents that other teams will have.
Yep, and so that's Oregon, Indiana. Winner will take on MSU. Oregon, Indiana on Thursday. Winner will take on MSU Friday at noon for the Big Ten tournament game kickoff. MSU with the double bye automatically advances to the quarterfinals.
I will be covering that Indiana game closely just to try to provide Spartan fans as much of an update to make sure they know their opponent.
Yep, and I mentioned it in the breakdown Emmett and I had earlier. He has obviously been approved for credentials, so he will be in Indianapolis. We're going to put him in a little shipping box and send him out as soon as this podcast is over. So you'll see him resurface in Indianapolis on Wednesday. But follow Emmett. He's been doing great work. I do want to take a quick minute to just thank Emmett for all of the great coverage he's done for both football and basketball this season, and a little hockey sprinkled in. But he's been our man in the press box for a lot of these events, and he's done a lot of good work for both the website, SpartanShadows.com, and then obviously the stuff we do here on the podcast. So shout out to Emmett. I do want to say quickly thank you also to Connor Muldowney and Ant Wright, our two head honchos here at Spartan Shadows. Ant's been great about getting all the credentials lined up and stuff for Emmett. Connor has also been great about getting everything we need for, well, just everything Spartan Shadows related. So shout out to both of them because they do a lot for both, not only this podcast, but also the website and everything that we do over there. If you don't already follow them on Twitter and on socials, do it. Also very good social media posters, both of them. And for being a Michigan fan, and if we get to talk to Ant potentially in the future on an episode, I want to ask him a little bit about today's incident. But for Ant being a Michigan alum and a Michigan fan, he is one of the more funny social media accounts I've ever seen. So Ant does great work over there, so check him out. But that'll be that for basketball. We are excited to get tournament season starting, but just to kind of wrap things up today, we had posted on our social medias, and then Emmett had posted just kind of asking if anybody had any mailbag questions or just things they wanted answered that we can discuss really quickly. We did get a couple, so we'll go ahead and answer those now. We'll do this again. And we also have the email, and you guys know all of our socials. If you ever want anything answered or discussed, shoot us a message on social media or email us. We're always more than happy to try to break down some things. So yeah, I've got a couple. Emmett's got a couple. We'll kind of trade off. We'll all answer. We'll try to wrap that up and then get you guys on your merry way. First one I got was from Connor. Speaking of Connor Muldowney, I'll start with this one. What has your guys' favorite moment this season been? I don't know who wants to start.
It has to be today, right?
Yeah.
For me,
okay.
It has to be today. I think either that or obviously the saga against Maryland. Like, when's the last time Michigan State has made a stat like that? Like, I actually really want to kind of go back. Obviously, like, you remember the Cassius stat against Maryland, but that was, like, going into halftime. Like, I really want to know, like, when the last time Michigan State has made a shot like that at the end of the game. Probably not very often. So I would say one of those two moments. And also having kind of like a Iowa 2.0 stare down moment, but for Trey Hellman.
Big Trey Hellman fan over there, I see.
Yeah.
So for me, I would say I also have two moments in mind. I have Senior Day today. Always nice to see a win over Michigan. Additionally, always great to be able to send the seniors out and give them time to kiss the court, not at the last after the game's over. Let them be able to take their moment in front of the full crowd. And obviously, does it help getting to do it in your rival's face? Sure, but is that the reason for the Senior Day? Absolutely not. The reason is to respect the seniors, and Izzo was adamant about he wants the seniors to get their recognition and not have those nerves of having to go out in front of everyone with your parents there at the very beginning of the game. Get recognized after the game because these players deserve to have you stick around and see them for the recognition. So Senior Day obviously was one of the top, and it's always going to be the top. You can ask me this every single year. Doesn't matter if Michigan State wins 30 games. Doesn't matter if they go undefeated. Doesn't matter if they go 1-30 with their only win being Senior Day. I will always say Senior Day is one of my favorite moments during the Michigan State basketball season. Additionally, the other moment for me would be the Oregon game. Massive comeback when you are celebrating the national champions in the house. Jase Richardson coming out party with 29 points. You do not create storylines like that. Jase Richardson gets his first start with his dad and all of his dad's old teammates in the house and goes off for 29 points. that is what you write as a story. You don't see that happen in real life, and we saw that happen. So if it wasn't for Senior Day beating Michigan, or the Oregon game would be hands down one of my favorite moments. And I can say confidently, it's also a couple of the players on the team's favorite moments. When I was interviewing Shimon Zapala post game, I had asked him what was the moment that really, like, as a team, is one of those moments you're going to miss the most. And one of those moments that's going through your head as you're about to go and kiss the court. And he mentioned that Oregon game. He's like, we got down nearly 20, and we claw and fight our way back to win. So, obviously, that game resonates a lot with the team, not just because of one of their players being, the son of one of those legends on the 2000s team, just because of how they bonded as a team to scrap back and fight. So I would say the celebration of 2000s national champions against Oregon and Senior Day. What about you, Chris?
My favorite moment was today. Senior Day is always one of my favorite games. It's, in general, awesome. Beating Michigan the way we beat Michigan, this little extracurricular stuff at the end, that all made it a little bit more special. But then to see the championship ceremony and the Senior Day ceremony afterwards and see Coach Izzo bringing the hockey team on, bringing the former players on, bringing Coach D'Antonio and Coach Smith on, having it just kind of represent and be a big moment all together today for MSU athletics and the university as a whole, that was really special to see.
And his mom in the house, don't forget her.
Yep, his mom was there to watch the game. She was there at 98 years old, so Mrs. Izzo got to watch a banner go up, and then obviously the rest of the Izzos were there. You got to see Lupe with the Senior Day festivities, and then having the baby in her hands afterwards, the little grandbaby, and gotten to see all the players' parents on the court for the seniors. And I know Jackson's Kohler's dad was there having a great time as all, and it's a fun day, and it's a fun festivity. Yep, and Trey's mom. Yep, so it's always a fun game, and then to have it with a banner ceremony to beat Michigan down the way we did, it was all a good day. I will say my favorite individual play of the year was the Jase Richardson play from the Oregon game, where I just looked like unstoppable with the little pump fake, little crossover, shook somebody out of his pants, got to the rim, finished, and you just see his dad and Mateen Cleaves in the crowd just smiling ear to ear. Mateen, ragging on Jay Rich, and that play was just insane. That's one of the better plays I've seen an MSU player make in quite some time. So, not counting Corn Carr's craziness that you see daily anymore. So that was
Carr's made us numb to dunks.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Frankie Fiddler dunk too, right next to Cohen. Like, he kind of took a little bit of Cohen's aura and kind of went up a little bit higher than I think maybe some fans can think he can jump.
Yeah. So, but yeah, today was special, and that's probably my favorite moment so far. I'm hoping there's more to come here in the next few weeks. Emmett, you want to hit one of your questions real quick?
Sure. Chef Bobby on Twitter asked, any update on Jase and the ankle? His post-game Instagram made it look like it's okay. Do you want to hit that first, or do you want me to hit that, Chris?
I was going to say, from what he looked like on TikTok, dancing after the game, he looked fine. So the team was having a ball, posting some post-game TikToks, and he didn't look too worse for wear. So I think he looks fine. I didn't see any issues cause the concern. I know he had a little bit of a limp for the rest of the game, but I imagine that was just a little kind of a twist and, little ache, I guess, that he had to deal with. But I would imagine with 5 days off until the next game, he'll be good to go.
Yeah, I would think relatively the same. He didn't look too hobbled in the locker room when we came in for post-game availability. He was talking about it in good spirits, mentioned that he had talked to the ref and, everything was good. So the hope is that he is at 100%. If there's any update and if he's limited, I'll be sure to report it on Friday, probably around 10 a.m. when the injury report comes out, because it comes out about 2 hours prior to tip. So we'll make sure to update that Friday at 10 a.m., whether if he's on the report or not on the report, I will be sending that tweet out. Additionally, you will probably hear on Tuesday when there is more of a press conference, before the team heads off to Indy. One of the advantages of not playing on Wednesday, this team gets to stay at home a little bit longer. So the team will be doing a press conference Tuesday before heading out. If there's any update on Jase Richardson, I'll be sure to retweet it. I won't be able to cover that press conference, unfortunately. but I will retweet the news when I hear.
I've got another question from actually Connor, and he brought this up to us too. This MSU basketball team is MSU's best team since when? Zach, why don't you start us off on this one?
I think there's two answers to it. I think there's not a wrong answer because I think it's just the way you approach it. Is obviously the 2018-2019 team, their run that they went on was absolutely insane. Was a really fun team. Cassius was just doing Cassius things. Obviously, the end result was a Final Four. Really close to a national championship appearance. Sadly, not there, but something that you're going to always remember. So I would say 2018-2019 is probably the best heading into kind of what I think that they can do in the tournament. Now, the reason why I say that is because obviously we all know 2019-2020. We never got to see the actual tournament happen. I think there was a lot of fans all around the country, probably a lot of Michigan State fans, but rightfully so, was considering this team, I don't want to say the title favorite, but probably right up there with any team in the country. You had Dayton, MSU, really Kansas at that point. We didn't get to see the run, so obviously we don't know the answer to it, but if you want to really talk about two teams that are getting hot at the right time, you think about that 2020 team and you think about this team right now. So obviously two different teams, but I think you have to go 2018, 2019 just because we know exactly what happened in March, and sadly we just never got the opportunity in 2019, 2020. Wish we did. It would have been, I think, very fun. Think it would have been special. Think we would have cut down the banners, but unfortunately, because of other things we can't control, we didn't get that, sadly enough.
Yeah, I agree. I also believe 2018-2019 because you have that for sure Final Four run. This team was getting hot at the right time, but they still had to get through. The 2019-2020 team still had to get through the Big Ten tournament, which you're going to be seeing. The reason why I say 2018-2019 is because you have that experience and leadership. You have Matt McQuaid, who was the getting hot at the right time. Meanwhile, 2019-2020, the replacing McQuaid was Rocket Watts, and Watts had yet to compete in that one and done in the collegiate level. So I think you could rely, and then you had Kenny Goins. He already was hitting that. I believe Malik Hall would have been the next. Malik Hall or Gabe Brown would have been next off the bench for that run. 2019-2020. Brown had his big moment against LSU 2018-2019, but that just adds to my argument of 2018-2019. So I would argue for the Final Four team because you've already seen them and you didn't get to see some of the major contributors having that 2019-2020. And that's no hate on Rocket Watts. I loved watching Rocket despite his tumultuous sophomore season and ultimate transfer out. I definitely was a huge Rocket Watts fan, but because you have that senior leadership and experience, I would side with 2018-2019.
Yeah, and that's probably the right answer. I'm still going to say 2020's team because I don't have a doubt in my mind that Cassius Winston was going to get Tom Izzo's national championship in his senior season. MSU was playing so well down the stretch. They had the team playing on all levels. You saw Gabe Brown really coming into his own. Freshman Rocket Watts was having a decent stretch there down the stretch as well.
Sure.
While Josh wasn't necessarily playing as much, Josh Langford was Senior Josh Langford was the leader, and obviously senior Cassius was just something special. So I get the 2018-2019 team is a Matt McQuaid 3 away from probably winning a national championship, but it just, unfortunately, I don't think there's a wrong answer between the two, but I've no doubt in my mind the way that team ended, and coincidentally enough, that was the last senior day skirmish with Chris Holtman and Ohio State. But it was the way that game ended and the way we had the team trending. Also the way college basketball was kind of that year in general. Yeah, there were some good teams that would have been a lot of trouble in the tournament, but I was taking MSU matching up with any of those teams in the country. So I'll say 2020 just to be different, but you can't go wrong with a Final Four that close from being a national champion run. So that'll be my answer.
All right.
We got a couple more.
Yep. Next question I got is, what is stopping Tom Izzo from getting Coach of the Year for the Big Ten this year?
I'll quick answer because I know we're running a little bit long. I am going to say just some Michigan State bias. Other than that, I think it's been pretty clear cut. I will shout out Dusty May's done an incredible job at Michigan. He's turned that team from the bottom of the Big Ten to, for the better part of this season, being a Big Ten frontrunner and probably a team that should have won the Big Ten championship. Unfortunately, that kind of end of season collapse, I think, kind of disqualifies them a little bit from the way we're picking hairs, but many people forget this Michigan State team was projected by most people to finish 7th or worse in the Big Ten. Not much worse, but 7th, 5th, 6th, right, all the way down to, I see 8th, 9th somewhere. Our first game in the year outside of the Champions Classic, we had we had the Bowling Green game. That was a big issue. And then we had the Champions Classic where we didn't look very well. Starting this season, there was a lot of questions for this team, and to finish with 5 losses and only 3 losses in conference in the probably the best iteration this Big Ten seen in many years. So it should be Tom Izzo, and that's taking the Spartan colored hat off and putting on just an analytical basketball. There's not other many coaches that are doing what he's doing. So
I'll give you a quick answer. Absolutely nothing. If you win the Big Ten by 3 games, if, like you're saying, Chris, they were projected kind of middle of the pack. If that coach doesn't win the Big Ten, and like you're saying, Chris, you gotta give credit to Dusty May. You also have to give credit to Guard over at Wisconsin. He's had a really great year. They've well overperformed of what they expected. But if the coach that took a team in the middle of the path that was projected before the year, win the Big Ten by 3 games, ties the most wins in Big Ten history for a conference play at 17, with Purdue last year with the National Player of the Year, and Braden Smith had 17 wins as well. We just tied them. If that coach doesn't win the Coach of the Year, I want to see the voting records for anyone that doesn't vote for him, because you should get yours taken away at that point, in my opinion.
Completely agree, and I agree with Zach. So there should be nothing. You can't win the conference by 3 games, and then your closest competition. Yes, Michigan's resurgent this year. I won't debate that. However, they haven't won a game by 2 possessions since January 14th. It's March 9th as we're recording this. The last time they won a game by more than 4 was in January. Additionally, you dropped 3 of your last 4 regular season games, including a nearly 20-point beatdown for your season finale. You choke away any chance you had of the Big Ten title. You can't go and then say that's the Coach of the Year over the guy who won it by 3 games, who of your transfer class of Fiddler and Zapala got laughed at and was basically said, okay, so they replaced Mady Sissoko with a worse Mady Sissoko. Mm-hmm. Zapala goes and he's not going to be an all-Big Ten player, an all-Big Ten defensive player, but he was the depth piece the Spartans needed to help keep them afloat and provide offensive upside. You saw what he could do to Ohio State, 15 points. So you can't say that this guy who made the right moves and goes and wins the conference by 3 games when he's projected to be 4. I think the best projection I saw might have been a 3rd. And then he goes and wins by 3 games. You can't go and say, yeah, he can't be the Coach of the Year because of his own success. That's the only thing that will prevent him. He would be a victim of his own success at the end of it. So I do not see a way Izzo loses it. Or I'm like Zach, give me those voting records because I'll replace one of them. I'll be honest, and I'll be transparent. You'll see my all Big Ten tournament team. I will be posting that once the tournament's over.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
All right, you got one more, or am I going back to back here?
You got the last one.
All right, so this one actually comes from Gun Eric 22. What are they going to do to get Booker's confidence and mojo back? He has not improved throughout the season like everyone hoped, and on defense is a liability.
Zach, you can go first.
Yeah, so this is a hard question because we've all seen moments this year, especially on the trip in Spain. We've all seen moments as well, like North Carolina. We've seen moments that he's hit the big shot. Even like obviously, like some people won't specifically remember it, but the three against Michigan at Michigan when it kind of settled things down for Michigan State. Booker also made I can't remember the next game after that a big three. Maryland. He made a big three against Maryland as well. So there's moments that you see that Xavier Booker can be the player that he is. Now I think and obviously at this point probably not some breaking news. I think he's a lot more of a project than people thought he was coming into Michigan State. I think there was that potential there. I think it's just going to be an off season full of getting that shot back because we've seen him hit the shots in big moments. It just seems like whenever he is engaged, whenever he's playing well, whenever he hits his first or second shot, then he usually plays pretty well. Defensively, I think there's still a ways to go. I think there's times where he does really good. Well, defending the ball, there's been times where he's done good having a block down low. Needs to get more aggressive on the defensive end, needs to continue to trust himself, and I think that this upcoming year, this junior year, I do think he will be back. I think there's going to be some discussion of will he transfer, stuff like that. That's just kind of the world we live in nowadays, obviously, because you never know what happens. No one does. But I think this upcoming year, his junior year, is going to be a real big factor on what is that transition going to look like. And I think it's about gaining confidence in his shot back, maybe getting him down low a little bit as well. I know he loves shooting a three, but we've seen him kind of get down a little bit near the block and have been decent at times. So I think it's just really kind of getting that shot back, continuing to make sure he's engaged throughout the game. I think that's kind of where you're at with Booker, and if he can take that next step, he's going to be a very productive player next year.
That is, I was about to say, Chris, you can go next.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, for me to kind of make it a quick answer, I think a lot of Xavier Booker's issues are mental, and I don't want to make it sound like as a bad thing. I just think he's in his head with how he's playing right now, and some of that is on the kind of the way he was brought in and being as highly touted as he was. Maybe he was a little bit overinflated in some rankings and stuff, and I don't want to mean that as a knock. He's a very talented player. But maybe the hype got just a little bit more than what it really needed to be. But I think he's just got to kind of sit down and kind of just have a quick reset this offseason and kind of get back to basics. I think everything, like you said, Zach, confidence-wise, once a shot starts falling, I think that's going to be big for him. And just being able to be committed to what he's doing on the floor and not kind of be in his head on decision-making, and things will fall into place. I do think, and I know some other people had mentioned saying that he was more of a project than your stereotypical 4 or 5-star would be, but it's just going to take time. It's just going to take patience. I know I said it earlier. I think that he would be the first to tell you he envisioned the season going a little bit differently. I know we all did, and that's okay, but that doesn't mean he can't turn out to be a very impactful player in the next year. And I'd like to think with Coach Izzo and with Sadie Washington, who I want to give a big shout out, because there's not going to be as necessarily as much love as I think he deserves. I think he's really turned around a lot with this team. Our bigs specifically, I think he's responsible for a lot of what Jackson Kohler's done this year. And I think more time working with Coach Washington and just kind of getting a reset over the summer, I think he'll be fine. So.
Yeah, and then for me personally, I think you've saw that all of us are talking about what he can do in the future for junior year. I think that ship has sailed for sophomore year. I do not think you're going to see him more than 5 minutes a game. They're at 5 to 7 minutes, like he's been playing the last 4 or 5 games. You're not gonna see him for more than that unless you have like a first round blowout in the Big Ten tournament or the NCAA tournament. You don't see Booker for more than 5 to 7 minutes. What they do now for his confidence in the 2024-2025 season, those few offensive, defensive possessions he's in, on offense, you try to draw him up one of those quick threes like you saw him hit against Michigan. One of those rhythm threes that everyone isolates on, say, Jase or isolates on Jaden because of how they're pushing it, and you kick it back out to Booker for an easy three. Obviously, that's a lot easier to say, and it's a lot easier to say than it is to draw up, but with this staff, I have confidence. But you don't really have much more to do than that because it's not even just offensively getting that confidence and shot back, because this is what Tom Izzo said on March 2nd, so the Wisconsin game. He said after the game, when asked about Xavier Booker and almost a stagnant development, his response was, "The hardest part about the game is that there are two ends of the court. I still love Book. I think he will be a great player. It has been difficult. The biggest thing is the sense of urgency for him during practices and games." Now, I've been doing media for a year and a half now, and I have not heard that way to describe a player almost ever. That really, it is not a glowing review from Tom Izzo. I will say that flat out.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like the issue is more of a mental and practice, a lack of engagement, and that's something Booker, personally, I think Xavier Booker needs to look at himself and see. I've mentioned looking at the mirror when talking about Michigan. Additionally, that's a way that the Spartans can look in the mirror, look at themselves, and be the best version of themselves. I have a lot of faith in Booker. I was talking to one of my friends on Twitter earlier, and I had said that when I look at Booker, I still see the freshman that was so excited to make his first start. You need to realize that these players, their time hopefully will come, because there's a reason they're playing at Michigan State. There's a reason Booker was the number 3 overall player in the country. In order to build that confidence, though, you have to have that. You have to want to show the coaches, show the other members of your team that intensity. The reason why Booker was playing so good at the start of the year was that intensity. So I definitely believe that the first step for him regaining confidence is him regaining confidence in himself and having that edge at practice. Now, could the Big Ten tournament being in Indianapolis, his home area, could that help? Sure. Could the Michigan scuffle when he's one of the first players out being engaged in the game, could that help his confidence? Sure. We could see that turnaround. Am I confident in that? Absolutely not. But is that a way that you could see Booker start playing with that edge he had at the beginning of the season? For sure. I haven't given up on Booker, and I don't think Izzo has either. I think Izzo saying that publicly is a mark that you definitely need to have a player starting to bend that corner, especially end of the sophomore season. But at this point, we are talking more about how Booker develops for 2025, 2026. Like I said, I think that ship has sailed for 2024, 2025. This is no hate on Booker. I just don't think he's more than the number 10 option in the 10-man rotation. He could peak at number 9 depending on if a player is sick or has an off night, but I think Booker is firmly number 10 in that 10-man rotation. I think he's more at danger of losing his spot to Kurt Tang at number 10 than he is at passing, say, Frankie Fiddler on an off night for number 9. This is just based on minutes played. That's no hate towards Frankie.
Right. Well, and this team functions so well as a team, too. You got to think that, I mean, he has a role right now, and if he starts putting together some games where he's on the court and positive things happen in bunches and he strings that together for a couple games, then, yeah, you'll see the minutes start to expand. But it's something to look at over the summer and reevaluate whether he stays in East Lansing or maybe the transfer portal is in the cards. But I think he's still got a lot of talent left on the basketball front, so I think he will be A-okay. But
and I'll say this flat out: if Booker ends up going to the portal and goes to, say, Ball State or something, will I tune into a Ball State game if I see them on TV? Absolutely. I love to see when Mady Sissoko had that 21-point, 15 rebound outing a couple days ago. So this is definitely I'm not hating on Booker. I think he's a very talented player. I've enjoyed getting to see him during media availability in locker rooms.
Yeah.
It's just one of those. It's a matter of results and production at this point for Booker.
Yep. So we'll see. I think there's a lot left untapped, but it's unfortunately a lot of sports at this level is mental. So if you can't get out of your own head and out of your own way, then that's going to cause a lot more damage than yips in your shooting stroke or whatever the case may be. So, but I will kind of cut us there. We've been going a little bit long. I do have a question or a couple more questions, but they're not really basketball related, so we'll save those for another time we do this. I want to thank you guys for hopping on, and anybody who's tuned in for still hopefully being here after this long, wonderful debate. But it's been a good episode, and this time of year is always fun, so we're going to try to get as much content out to you guys as we can. Real quickly, before we wrap anything up, do you guys have any last words, anything you need to get out?
No, just excited for this Big Ten tournament. Yes, I know it doesn't necessarily matter. The Spartans have won that. You're never going to take that banner away. But when you love to be able to see the tournament champions in addition to that Big Ten title, I think the Spartans have the talent to do it. They won the Big Ten by 3 games for a reason.
Yep.
Exactly. And also, just saw on Twitter about 40 minutes ago, there's a picture of Trey and those 2 Michigan players. Cassius Winston responded to 2 fire emojis as well. So let's just end it with their night.
Room game that Cassius had actually contacted him and thanked him for what he did. So 5 respecting 5 right there.
Yep. Absolutely. And, the alums liked it. And for those of you into getting all of the Coach Izzo content you can possibly take, sounds like later breaking news. Sounds like Coach Izzo may be on Pardon My Take with Big Cat and the Barstool guys tomorrow, potentially. So might be something to look out for tomorrow. But we appreciate everybody tuning in. Thanks so much for that. Thanks for all your feedback on the mailbag. If you have any other ones, send them to us on social media. Email them to us. We'll add them to the list for the next time we do this. Maybe after the basketball season. Maybe not. We'll see. So we appreciate that. We appreciate all your engagement. Give us a like. Give us a follow on YouTube. That's where most of our stuff, all of our stuff pretty much goes. We are on Apple, on Spotify. I apologize. There's some episodes missing. That will be rectified soon. The auto update thing from YouTube and Spotify and Apple is not what I want it to be. I gotta backdate that, but that's where all of our episodes are, and the YouTube is the main priority and avenue. So always give us a follow there, and comments, of course, if you want anything to add. We like to see them and go through them. So we appreciate everybody. Again, congratulations to the basketball team. I just want to give a quick thank you to Jaden, Shimon, and Frankie. I hope you guys had a great senior day, and it was a great day for all of us fans and Spartans alike. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. As always, take care, be safe, and go green.
Go white.
Go white.